Hey, welcome back. Right now, we're going to be looking at everything you need to know about importing your images into Lightroom Classic. Hey there, welcome to my Lightroom Quickstart Bootcamp. I'm Brent Bergherm, and I'm happy to take you on this journey to learn Lightroom from the ground up. So let's now continue with the idea of importing. I've got the images on this little card here, and we're just going to plug it right in and get right to it. So the first thing we see happen is the dialog box comes up. This is the Import Dialog Box. It's automatic. If it happens to not show up for you for some reason, then what you need to do is just hit this import button right down here. All right, so you can see all of a sudden I've got bunches of images from the chickens and the horses and just a little bit of life on the farm here. But let's not get too sidetracked with that. Let's start here on the left-hand side where we're talking about our source. The source is just saying, okay, where are you bringing these images in from? So we have two ways to select the source. If you have this disclosure triangle expanded, you can see every single type of media, whether it's a hard drive, a thumb drive, maybe it's the little memory card like I have plugged in here, that EOS digital memory card. And we also can select up here. So we have the different devices that we can choose up here. So we're going to go with, of course, the EOS digital memory card. We got this DCIM as a default. That's Canon's default function for the folder or whatever. And then what I like to do is also have this item include subfolders clicked, because maybe you've got multiple folders on your camera that you've created. Maybe you've got just who knows what you've got. Maybe you're going between two different cameras, and if you went from like what I shoot with a Sony and a Canon and I just plug it in from one camera to the next, they each have their own folder structure, and so we want to be able to grab every image, and so by including subfolders we're going to do that. We also have this eject after import option, and that's just going to tell the computer, when I'm done here, when Lightroom is done, go ahead and unmount or eject that card, and then I can go ahead and pull it out and I can go about my way and shoot more pictures. Now I would take this off if I had videos here, because I do not like to have Lightroom categorize or do anything with my videos, and so I would take this off so it would leave it in the computer when it's done importing, and then I could go and access those videos and I could put them wherever I wanted to put them for the project I was working on. But for here, I'm going to go ahead and keep that active so I can eject that card after import. All right, the next item, you can see a little arrow is going to point us over. What are we doing now? So let's take a look here at the very top. Copy as DNG is an option. Copy is an option, and then grayed out, we can't select these. Move and add are an option. So what do these things mean? What we can do here on copy as DNG, we can have Lightroom not only copy the images from where they're at, where we create a new copy to where we want them to go, but we can also have Lightroom convert it to the Adobe DNG format. It stands for digital negative. There are a couple of benefits in going to the DNG that I'll cover right now, and that is usually, please understand, usually is the key word here. Usually the file is usually a little bit smaller than your native CR2 or NEF or whatever else you're dealing with on your native branded raw file format. It's just something that it's not too big of a deal, I don't think, but sometimes it's a little bit smaller. Also, all of the metadata that is in your file will always be embedded in the file itself, and you'll see what that means later. But when you make all these changes in Lightroom, if you want those to go along with that raw file and you want it to be recognized outside of the catalog, you have to have this thing called a sidecar file that goes with the CR2 files. I'll explain that all a little bit later, but for now, just know that it's all packaged in that one DNG file versus two separate files if you want that processing data and you want that metadata to go along with the file outside of Lightroom. And also, Adobe has promised that, well, as long as they're in business, they're always going to support the DNG format, and so we can have some type of longevity item in there. Personally, I prefer to just leave it on the copy. I like to go ahead and leave it as the CR2. In this case, the CR2 files, if I have the Sony images coming in, it's ARW. When I have those images coming in like that, well, I actually kind of think that's maybe a little bit more of a future proofing. The biggest thing, with two things on this. The biggest thing, the reason I make that decision is I don't have to spend the time converting the image to the DNG format. That just adds time to the overall import process. When I'm importing my images, I kind of usually want to go a little more efficiently, a little more quickly. And if I'm spending all that computer resources on converting it to the DNG, that's just going to really take a long time. But the other thing is, what if for some reason I wanted to jump to a different operating, way of doing my images, maybe Capture One or On One or what have you? I think I would be in a better position if I had those Canon files or those Sony files or whichever system I have. I'd probably be in a better starting position rather than having the Adobe transferred, the Adobe translated to the DNG type image. Those software packages certainly do recognize the DNG, but it's just something that I'm going to try and go a little bit more simple. I have a lot quicker import process here, and if I were to translate over to something else, I trust that whoever is going to get my business, they're going to be able to support my images down the road as well. All right, the move will actually, if you were to have a folder on a hard drive and those images weren't where you wanted them to be, staying forever, then you would be able to click the move button and you would say, okay, here's where the images are over here in the source area. That's where the images are. But now I want to move them over to this other location, this other folder. And then the move would do that. It would get rid of them at the source and it would place them at your destination. And then you'd be good to go there. And then if you were to do simply add, all it would do is say, oh, here's a folder that's on your hard drive. And all we want to do is now start managing that folder in Lightroom. And it leaves them right where they're at. And you can now import those images and manage those images in Lightroom. We have a few other secondary buttons here. The All Photos will just show all the photos on the memory card. New Photos would show us only the new photos from the last import. So if you had additional items that were coming in, you can see here we have Don't Import Suspected Duplicates clicked or selected. And so right now, there is no suspected duplicates, so there is no filtering. But if we did have some images that we had already imported, we then went back out and shot some more on the same card, we bring that card in, we plug it in the computer, we can just say, show me just the new photos only, please. All right, and then there's destination folders. So right now it's going to show us this 2021-01/11 or -11. And so that is a folder it's going to go into. Now, if I had multiple days that I created images on this card, that I shot images on this card, then it would give me these 2 different items, 3 different items, however many different folders I had based on the destination settings. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Almost always, in fact, I do always have it just show all photos, because if I did have selected duplicates active, which I always do as well, and there were some duplicates that it suspects are already in the catalog, it'll actually just gray those out and it won't import those anyway automatically. It just depends on what you want to see here in this overall preview. All right, a few other items to look at. Let's go ahead and select this image as just tapping on it. And then if I hit this button down here, I can show it and say, okay, I'm just looking at the one image. So I've brought it up nice and big and I'm just looking at the one image. And then I should be able to use my keyboard to go back and forth from image to image. So you can see I'm just tapping the left arrow to go back, and I tap the right arrow to go forward. And so I can go ahead and take a look at those individual images. By hitting the space bar, I'm zooming in on some details right in the middle. So this could be an easy culling function that I like to see that happen here. So if I were to select on the first image and then I come through and I'm going through here and I'm all like, you know what? Oh, I love that. But let's say this is an image I don't want. I hit the X and then I'm just not going to import it. And I hit the X on that one as well. And X on there. And as I go through, oh, that one was terrible. Hit the X on that one, hit the X on that one. And then let's make sure that that X held. You see, it still doesn't have include in the import. So that is good news. And I don't like all the motion that's happening here on these images. So we'll just pretend that these are not to be imported. So that is a way to quickly cull some images before you import them. And that's kind of nice. All right, I'm going to click back here on this grid. And you can see how it has grayed out these images now. It still shows them there, but it's only going to show us the ones highlighted anyway. It's going to show us the ones that are actually going to be imported into the catalog. All right, coming across over here, we can check all, we can uncheck all. Notice these checks. Those are the items that are going to make sure that we are selected and bringing it into the catalog. We also can just click on these, and I'm going to use my command key to click non-contiguously. I can then click one of them and then they all get clicked. Or I can uncheck one of them and they're all unchecked. Alternately, I can select one and then I can go and shift select and I get a whole range of them. Or select this one and then shift select and I get the whole range of those. And I can uncheck, or in this case check, or uncheck them all. And now they're all the same. So let's go ahead and take that one off because I don't want that one imported. I then have this item for sorting my images from ascending A to Z, or I can reverse it. And then I can choose my capture time, my checked state, my file name, my file type or media type. Now, if I had some videos going here amongst what I'm trying to import here, I would totally go with media type, and then I would be able to easily collect all of those videos together, either at the very beginning or at the very end of what I'm showing here in this grid, and then I'd be able to go ahead and very easily uncheck all of those videos. I can modify my thumbnail size. And then, of course, I have an import preset down here at the very bottom. This is kind of a little bit separated. You can see it's in this lighter item, this lighter gray area. But this would be if you had special things, special settings. Maybe the eject after import you wanted to include as a preset in one and not in another. Maybe different destination items that you wanted to include in one set of photos and not another. For instance, I'm thinking like with my family images, I might want to tag my family a certain way versus my travel images. And so I could use these different import presets to set up these different ways of importing the images according to what we're seeing here. All right, the last thing we're going to look at is this biggest one probably, and that is the destination side of things. Where are we going to put these images, and when we put them there, what are we going to do with them? All right, so you can see across the top we have our first item is just simply, okay, where some basic folders are the destination. I pretty much never click on this, but whatever, there it is. Under file handling, our build previews. Now, in the first video, we looked at the idea of what it means to build a standard preview. That was under the catalog settings here. And so you can see here, the build previews is currently set to standard. Now, if you wanted to go ultra efficient, go with embedded in sidecar, because what that's going to do, it's going to tell Lightroom to just use the JPEG preview that's already in your file because your camera put it there. Your raw file, in this case the CR2s, it has a JPEG preview embedded because my Canon put it in there. And so it's a Canon generated preview, and that's all I'm seeing right now as well. I'm not seeing the Lightroom generated preview. So the reason I like to have standard selected is because I like to have Lightroom create the previews for me, and I don't need to then be put up with the different manufacturers. It's maybe a small quibble, I guess I could admit, but when I shoot images with the Sony, the a6400, and the Canon 5D Mark IV, they create very different previews that are embedded into their raw files. And I just don't like how that happens. When I'm clicking through from image to image to image, they're vastly different, and it's just annoying when I'm trying to call and edit. So I like to do the standard. Plus, there's another thing coming on down here that I'm going to show you that is a Lightroom preset for development, and that gets applied to every preview. If I only had embedded in sidecar, then that would not allow those other settings to be applied because this is just using the camera settings, the camera preview that it made. All right, this one-to-one preview, this is going to take a long time to make. So I don't do this on my initial import because I usually haven't done my culling yet. And so when I select one-to-one, I'm doing a pixel for pixel full-sized JPEG preview according to those settings that were also set there in this area over here, the catalog settings, the medium, the high, the low, what have you. And so that can take a really long time to make those. And so this is a balancing act. I like to have certain things go ahead and show it to me with some Lightroom presets that I've had in there and get the preview with those presets. But to have a one-to-one, that's a little much. I reserve that for later when I'm making final decisions as to which ones are my final good keepers, and then I'll go ahead and have spend the time to do the one-to-one previews. All right, so we have this other item, build smart previews. The smart previews are all about being able to have a little extra flexibility, a little extra functionality when you don't have your images actually connected to the computer. So I think I've mentioned the potential idea. If not, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it a little bit here, and that is, where do we save our images again? Do we put our images all on one hard drive? Do we put them on multiple hard drives? If you've got them on multiple hard drives and that hard drive isn't connected, then you can only see the image. You can't do anything with that image. Well, if you have smart previews, you can start to do some things still, and then it will update that item with your real image, with your actual image, when that hard drive gets plugged in again. That just takes more time. It's a whole nother preview that it has to make. So that's another thing on my import process. I don't want to spend time doing that, so I don't check it. I definitely do not want to import duplicate files, so I always have this selected. And then if I wanted to, I could make a second copy and send it to somewhere. And so I would have to choose a folder, a hard drive, a folder, whatever, and send it to a certain location. Maybe you've got a connected network attached storage device that's maybe in another room or somewhere across the office, and it's mounted onto your local computer. Well, you could do this and it will send a copy of those images to that device. Maybe it's just literally another plug-in hard drive that you've got right here on your computer. Whatever you want to do, you've got an option for an instant backup of all your images. I personally don't do that because I always have a time machine backup. Once these images are imported onto my regular hard drive, hopefully nothing happens in that first hour, because it will take up to an hour for Time Machine to recognize that and say, oh, I've got new images. I need to back those up. So as long as things are going to, happen within an hour, I'm pretty fine with it, and it's not going to be a problem. All right, we could add to a collection as well. And so I'm not going to get into collections at this point right now. It's just if you wanted to, you could totally add that to a collection on import, and that could be pretty nice. All right, on this file renaming. If you wanted to rename these files, you don't like the 1M0A, whatever this is, you don't like that naming structure from your camera, then by all means go ahead and work on this. However, I'm not going to do that at this time. My personal practice is to do it later once I've made the decision, these are the images I'm going to absolutely keep, then I do renaming. So I will show you how to do renaming in a later video. All right, this next one, apply during import. This is that develop setting preset that I had mentioned earlier, and I have this applied to every single image because these are the very bare bones things that I want applied to every single image. There's lens information, and let's see what else is there. A few sharpening settings, and that's pretty much it. It's extremely bare bones, but I found myself doing this to every single image as a starting point so I could make an assessment. Is this a technically good image or is this not a technically good image? And then I can go from there and make all the sorts of things. But by doing this, I make sure that my standard previews are built with this in mind. And so I get to see all of that information all at once in my previews right out of the import process. If I wanted to add metadata, so this would be things like my copyright information, maybe I've got a few other items I want to throw in there, I could change these presets for what I want to do with adding metadata to the image. If I wanted to add keywords, for instance, like on the farm, it recognizes it from a previous time I was doing something here. So I could add on the farm to every single image as that gets imported. And so you could come up with some keywords for yourself. If you wanted to do something else, like I wanted to add the county that this was in, Umatilla, Oregon. So that would give us, you can see how I separated it with a comma, and then I just added the other item there. And I put a space. The comma is what separates keyword to keyword. All right. Let's go to the next one, destination. Quite possibly the most important item is understanding where you're going to put your images. So with this, let's take a look here at the first item, into subfolder. So it is currently on the Photos MK4 hard drive, which is where I want it to go. And then I have this thing called initial import. And so this folder for initial import, this is something I have set up already. Let me show you how to set that up. First off, I'm going to select the Bootcamp sample. I'm going to then create a new folder, right click and create a new folder inside of it. And then I'm going to hit this item that says new folder, and I'll do initial import 2, and then hit choose. And so now it's going to go into initial import 2. Now certainly you would only need one, hopefully, initial import. I'm just showing you how to make a folder there if you wanted to have that to separate out your items. This is what I like doing. I like to separate everything that I've not looked at yet, I've not edited, and then once I go through and I select my keepers, I will then move them into the photos folder, but not going to move it into the photos folder just yet. All right, so I'm going to select initial import 2 for right now. And we can see that I've told it to organize by date. We can organize by original folders. That is the original folders that they come from. We can put it into one folder so they could all just go right into initial import and nothing else. That's the one I selected, and forget about it. I do like to organize it by date at this stage because what it gives me is a running list of the various folders, the various days that I've had a shoot, and it allows me to go ahead and put everything into this initial import and not really worry about it because I know all those different shoots are separated by dates. And then if they're still here in initial import, I know I haven't worked on them yet. If I were to put them into the photos and just let it run up, I don't have any designation that says, hey, Brent, you've not worked on that picture yet, get to it. And so when it's in the initial import, yeah, I've got that item that says, Brent, get to it. You need to get this done. You need to work on these items. And when I switch over to showing you my personal catalog, you'll totally see what I mean when I'm talking about that. All right, so another option that we have under this date format, let's take a look at this for a moment. So we could select, let's say this one. And what it's going to do under initial import, it's then going to create a 2021 folder, a month folder, and a day folder. So these happen to all be photographed on the 11th of January of 2021. And so it's going to give me those images in that subfolder structure. Now this is only because we have those little slashes in there. If I wanted them only separated by month, then I could do something like that to where, okay, now it's going to go into 2021 and then January. So everything I ever shot in January would always be put into that folder by default. Now this might be something that you like to have happen with your images. Let's say we were not going to do, let's kind of derail our thought process for a moment. Let's say you just wanted everything to go into a single folder structure and not have to worry about a blame thing ever. Well, select a photos folder like this, and then select organize by date like this, and maybe choose, the granular control all the way out to the individual days, or just the month is probably fine too. Or maybe you want the month by number instead of FEB, you want the month by number. And so when you're going like this and you look into the 01 folder in this case, that's January, then you don't have to think about anything else. Every single image you ever shoot will always be in this structure. Well, what happens 3 months down the road? Well, it's going to be in the 2021 folder, and then there's going to be an 05, an 04, whatever the month is that you're shooting those photos in. So if you like to just run everything by date, then here's the way to do it automatically, that Lightroom just removes that process of trying to figure things out, and it just does it this way for you. Incidentally, I have a little story to tell you. I had a client who had gobs of images, over 105,000 images, spread across about 6 or 7 different hard drives. And there were multiple copies of these images, at least most of these images, across these hard drives. And so he was just like, Brent, it's too confusing. I just need you to do it and take care of it and make it happen. Well, this is actually what I did. I took all of those hard drives, I plugged them in, I came in and I created a whole new catalog, and I said, okay, we're going to go out to those hard drives and we're going to grab every image on the hard drive. And so I did this. I just selected a hard drive and I hit include subfolders. And so it loaded in every image, brought it in. I then came over here and I hit don't import suspected duplicates. And after the second hard drive was attached and installing, I definitely had duplicates showing up, and it was saying, oh my, there's lots of images that you've already imported. And I'm just like, leave those alone. I don't want to touch them. Only bring in the new ones. And so we only brought in the new ones, but I created him a photos folder. I then told Lightroom to do it by year, and then by month, and then by day, just like this. And it gave me a series of folders. And so from 2010 onwards, it gave me a folder for every year, for every month, and for every day that he had pictures, and it automatically did that, and it automatically, according to the date that is in the metadata of each image, it automatically categorized all of his images, and it put them in those appropriate folders, and everything was good. Now, the only thing that wasn't good really is the fact that if he had done some work previously in Lightroom and he has some metadata for the processing and things like that, with his process, that didn't come over, but he was willing to suffer that loss because he just wanted all of his pictures in one spot with the same criteria, the same organizing criteria throughout, and it worked for him. So it may work for you, and that's just a story I wanted to pass along, so that can be a decision that you end up making for yourself. You'll notice here it's only importing 25 of the 27 because I have 2 that are not checked. And I'm going to go back here and go to initial import 2, and I'm going to change this back to this item so it'll give me just a single folder, but with the dated information, the 2020, the 01, the 11, and so it's still just one folder. It just has all of that information in the name of that folder. That's pretty much it. We are finally done, finally ready to go, and hit this import button. Let's do it. So as we import, we can see it's doing 2 things up here. There it is, 2 operations in progress. If I click on that, okay, it's copying and importing, and it's building standard previews. And so we also have this address lookup paused, and we have the face detection paused. I definitely want to leave that alone. And then you can see it ejected the card after import, and it's still building some previews on some of these images. So it imported them all, but now it's going through and it's building all these previews. You can see the colors are changing on some of these as it dances across. Here it comes with that one, and now the last one, and it's done. All right. One last thing to be thinking about here, and that is under this item here where it says catalog, we then have this little kind of sort of a preview button here on this previous import. I could go 10 days, I could go a month. If I don't have any other images that I have imported into it, I could always click on this, and it will always show me those images from the last import that I did. It doesn't matter where they're at on the hard drives. It doesn't matter what folder they're in, anything. It will just give me the previous import of what I did in that last import. And sometimes that can be helpful. You're wondering, now what did I work on last? Well, just come click the previous import and you'll be able to see exactly what you worked on last. Okay, there it is. We finally finished everything about this import process and the things we need to think about when we're trying to get our images into Lightroom. From the source to what we're doing and what we're doing it to, and of course where it's going. And we don't want to lose those images at all. So we want to understand where they're going and how Lightroom is managing these images. The next video, we're going to take a look at culling and file naming. So we'll see you there.